We're considering major health legislation by Representatives Quigley and Fortenberry to advance treatment for ALS. The Act for ALS is the most popular bill in the House with 328 bipartisan co-sponsors. It allows more patients to receive experimental medicines through compassionate care programs.
The chair now calls up H.R. 3537, the Accelerating Access to Critical Therapies for ALS Act, as forwarded by the Subcommittee on Health. The clerk will report the bill.
Committee print to H.R. 3537 to direct the Secretary.
Madam Clerk, without objection, the first reading of the bill would be dispensed with. The bill is now considered as read. And without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. And I'll start by recognizing Ms. Escher to speak on the bill. The gentlewoman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I seek recognition to strike the last word and speak on the bill. Today is really a big day in the life of the ALS community across our country. This is legislation that is really the most popular bill in the House with, I think when I spoke at the beginning of our markup, I think 328 bipartisan co-sponsors. And one of the lead legislators, Mr. Fortenberry, our good friend who has worked so hard on this with Mr. Quigley of Illinois, is here with us in the hearing room. Welcome, Jeff. It's good to see you here. I can't help but think about a beautiful letter that a constituent wrote to me, Jamie Berry, and I'll quote from her letter. She said, with ALS, a piece of you dies every single day. We're simply asking for a fighting chance to live the lives we were meant to live. And that's what this legislation is. So to Jamie, her fellow ALS patients, I'm proud, I think we're all proud to vote for the Act for ALS to support your fighting chance against this deadly disease. And kudos to, again, to Mr. Fortenberry, Mr. Quigley for the work that they have done. They have done a yeoman's job because there isn't a member that they haven't contacted multiple times to make sure that they could be a part of this important effort. This was not an easy thing to do. You know, when it gets here and the ink is dry, all the co-sponsors, we all agree, passed out of the subcommittee, but this was not easy to do. We had to work very hard with the FDA to make sure that this would be a transformational bill, to make sure that people with ALS are given treatment options, because they have none today. And it's something that they all deserve. So with that, Mr. Chairman, bravo to the lead authors of this legislation. I think that if we listen carefully, we'll hear applause across the country from a group of patients that I think that we're giving hope to, and they certainly deserve it. It's a deadly, horrible disease, and at least they'll be able to take these, use these treatment options. And I want to call out Patrizia, is it Calzone, Dr. Calzone from the FDA that worked with us to make sure that we could be aligned with each other. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentlewoman. There's a vote, so we're going to ask the ranking member to do her statement, and then we'll break, because we still have another 3 or 4 bills that we have to deal with. So I recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke on this bill in the subcommittee, but I just wanted to join in recognizing the extraordinary leadership of the lead co-sponsors of this legislation, Congressman Jeff Fortenberry and Congressman Quigley. I, too, have had numerous conversations with them and appreciate their advocacy on behalf of everyone across this country that is battling ALS and their families. And this one means a lot to people, and as Ms. Eshu just said before me, it gives people hope. It gives people hope at one of the most difficult times in their life. It gives them a fighting chance against a terrible, terrible disease. Like so many, we've all had the chance to meet those that have ALS. We have a dear family friend that's battling ALS. It's just a devastating disease, and I am thrilled that we were able to get this on the markup today, that we're going to be able to get it out of committee, and again, just applaud the leadership of Congressman Fortenberry and Quigley. I yield back.
In July, the Health Subcommittee held a hearing to learn about the challenges associated with finding treatments for neurodegenerative diseases, including ALS, and we heard from the lead scientists at NIH and FDA and researchers at top universities who discussed the difficulty scientists have had in understanding the complexity of the disease and developing biomarkers, a critical tool for drug development. And FDA told us about the guidance they had given industry on master protocols and adaptive clinical trial designs, which could allow more patients to enroll in clinical trials and get access to investigational therapies being studied. We also heard from patients who said that FDA's guidance was not doing enough to get results on the ground, and given the length of time it often takes to diagnose ALS, many patients have found themselves locked out of clinical trials, despite the guidance urging developers to allow more flexible enrollment. As a result, patients and their families are left to fight this devastating disease with very limited medical interventions available to them. According to these patient advocates and researchers, FDA's guidance was not being implemented by developers or the agency itself. So the legislation in front of us today takes real steps to improve processes and activities at FDA so more of these novel clinical trial designs can be implemented and accessible to more patients. First, the bill requires FDA to publish within 6 months an action plan describing the actions the agency will take in the next 5 years to foster the development of safe and effective drugs that improve and extend the lives of those living with ALS and facilitate access to therapies. Second, the bill creates a new grant program at FDA to cover research costs to characterize rare neurodegenerative diseases, identify molecular targets for the diseases, and increase efficiency and productivity of clinical trials, including through the implementation of these adaptive clinical trial designs and master clinical trial protocols. The bill also creates a new partnership between FDA, NIH, and ALS researchers in the field to advance regulatory science and scientific research that will support and accelerate the development and review of drugs for ALS patients. Additionally, the bill creates a new grant program at HHS that will help pay for investigational drugs to prevent, diagnose, mitigate, treat, or cure ALS in expanded access programs. While expanded access is an important pathway for patients who have no other access to treatment, I continue to have reservations about the concept of the federal government paying drug manufacturers and hospitals for treatments that have not been approved or authorized by FDA outside of clinical trials. However, the amendment that Ranking Member Rogers and I offered at the Health Subcommittee will make strong improvements to the bill that help clarify the parameters of this program, ensuring that only those who cannot access clinical trials will be able to use expanded access, while still providing a pathway forward for patients who are not able to participate in clinical research. The legislation forwarded by the subcommittee also ensures the scientific integrity of NIH is maintained, requiring grant applications to go through peer review and clarifying how data from expanded access could potentially inform research. Additionally, the bill now requires the GAO to measure the program ahead of a 5-year sunset to ensure that these novel grant programs are benefiting patients and researchers. And the expanded access grants included in this bill are charting new territory for NIH, and it's important we measure its level of success before we entertain any efforts to expand this program beyond ALS. At the hearing we held in July, Brian Wallach and his wife Sandra Abrevaya, co-founders of IMALS, charged us very clearly with the task of passing this bill. And for the last year, all of our offices have heard from hundreds of patient advocates across the country. We heard you, and now we are acting. We were all so grateful for the strong and courageous testimony we received in the advocates' work and collaboration to get this bill where it is today. So I'm pleased that with this markup, the Energy and Commerce Committee is taking a big step forward for patients, and I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I yield back.
We're dealing with a piece of legislation I'm so thrilled is going to pass this wonderful committee that has 328 co-sponsors to provide some hope to people with ALS, the Act for ALS. Anyway, I am so grateful to my colleagues, Brian Wallach and his wife, Sandra Bravaya, who came here in one of the most moving hearings I have ever been in my 22 years in Congress, talking about having a chance to live. One of my oldest and dearest friends made a decision to go to Canada where he could take his own life when he was dying from ALS. And because of the testimony and the support for this legislation, we want to give people a chance to choose life, or at least to get a chance. And I want to thank Brian and Sandra for their moving testimony. I also want to thank Chair Pallone, Chair Eshoo, Representatives Quigley and Fortenberry, who took the lead on this legislation, and made the commitment to work at every angle to try and advance this chance for ALS victims. I also want to thank the organization I Am ALS that mobilized the ALS community to be fighting for this bill, and I look forward to voting in favor of Act for ALS so that the Congress can stand with the ALS community. I thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlewoman. Does anyone else want to speak on the bill? Hearing none, there are no amendments to my knowledge, so we'll go to final passage. Question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 3537 as amended to the House. All those in favor of reporting H.R. 3537 as amended to the House will signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and H.R. 3537 as amended is reported to the House.